My ex-wife stole $3,000 from our daughter's college fund to pay for her stepson's birthday party, so I called her new husband, who immediately paid it back and filed for divorce. Now she claims I destroyed her marriage. Never thought I'd be sharing this story publicly. But after the absolute chaos of the last few months, I feel like I need to get this off my chest. Maybe it'll help someone else who's dealing with a difficult co-parenting situation, or maybe it'll just help me process what happened. Either way, here's the story of how my ex-wife's selfish decision destroyed her second marriage and somehow became my fault. My name is David, and I'm 42 years old. I have a 16-year-old daughter named Emma with my ex-wife Lisa. Lisa and I divorced when Emma was 8, and while our marriage didn't work out, I thought we had figured out how to co-parent effectively. We had our disagreements, sure, but we both loved Emma and wanted what was best for her. At least, I thought we both did. After our divorce, Lisa remarried a guy named Mark about 3 years later. Mark seemed like a decent enough guy. He was a successful accountant, treated Emma well when she was at their house, and from what I could tell, he made Lisa happy. He had a son from his previous marriage, Tyler, who was about Emma's age. The kids got along fine, and for a while, it felt like we'd all managed to create a functional, blended family situation. One of the things Lisa and I had agreed on during our divorce was setting up a college savings account for Emma. We both contributed to it regularly. I put in $200 every month, and Lisa was supposed to contribute $150. The account was in both of our names, but we had an understanding that this money was strictly for Emma's future education. By the time Emma turned 16, we'd managed to save about $18,000, which felt like a good start toward helping her avoid massive student loans. Emma is a great kid. She gets good grades. She's involved in drama club and volunteer work, and she's already started thinking seriously about which colleges she wants to apply to. She knows about the college fund, and it's given her a sense of security knowing that Lisa and I are both committed to supporting her education. She talks excitedly about maybe studying journalism or communications, and she's been working part-time at a local bookstore to contribute her own money to her college savings. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until about 4 months ago when I noticed something odd. I check the college savings account online every month just to make sure our contributions are going in correctly and to see how much it's grown. When I logged in that month, I saw that $3,000 had been withdrawn. That was a significant chunk of money, almost 3 months' worth of our combined contributions. I immediately called the bank to make sure there hadn't been some kind of mistake or fraudulent activity. They confirmed that the withdrawal had been made in person by Lisa using her ID and debit card for the account. I was confused and concerned. Lisa hadn't mentioned any emergency or special expense that would require dipping into Emma's college fund, and we'd always agreed that any major withdrawals would be discussed between both of us first. I called Lisa that evening to ask about the withdrawal. At first, she was evasive, saying something about unexpected expenses and that she'd pay it back soon. When I pressed for more details, she got defensive and said I was being controlling and that she had every right to access the account since her name was on it. She hung up on me before I could get a straight answer about what the money had been used for. This was completely out of character for Lisa, despite our differences. She'd always been straightforward about money matters. Especially when it came to Emma, the evasiveness and defensiveness set off alarm bells for me. I decided to ask Emma if she knew anything about what might have required such a large expense. Emma was just as confused as I was. She said Lisa hadn't mentioned any emergencies or big purchases, and she couldn't think of anything that would cost $3,000, but then she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. She said that Tyler, her stepbrother, had just had the most amazing Sweet 16 party the weekend before. She showed me pictures on her phone from the party, and it was elaborate. We're talking about a catered event with a DJ, professional decorations, and what looked like it cost way more than a typical teenager's birthday party. I asked Emma more questions about the party, trying to keep my tone casual so she wouldn't realize I was investigating. She told me that Lisa and Mark had apparently been arguing about the party for weeks. Mark thought it was too expensive and over the top, but Lisa insisted that Tyler deserved something special. Emma said she'd overheard Lisa telling Mark that she would handle the cost and not to worry about it. The pieces were starting to come together, and I felt sick to my stomach. It seemed like Lisa had used Emma's college money to pay for Tyler's birthday party, despite Mark's objections to the expense. She'd essentially stolen from her own daughter's future to throw an extravagant party for her stepson. I needed to be absolutely sure before I confronted Lisa again, so I did a little more digging. I asked Emma if she could remember exactly when the party had been, and it lined up perfectly with when the withdrawal had been made from the college account. I also asked her if Lisa had seemed stressed about money lately, and Emma mentioned that she'd overheard Lisa and Mark having several tense conversations about finances. Armed with this information, I called Lisa again. This time, I was direct. I told her that I knew the $3,000 had been used for Tyler's party, and I demanded an explanation. Lisa went completely off the rails. She started screaming at me over the phone, saying that Tyler was part of the family too and deserved nice things. She said Mark was being cheap and unreasonable about the party, so she had to find another way to pay for it. I told her that stealing from Emma's college fund was unacceptable and that she needed to replace the money immediately. Lisa's response was to blame me for being obsessive about checking the account and causing drama over what she called borrowed money. She insisted she would pay it back eventually, but she couldn't say when or how. This conversation made it clear that Lisa didn't see what she'd done as wrong. In her mind, she was justified in taking Emma's college money to pay for Tyler's party. She showed no remorse and no real plan for replacing the funds. I realized that I couldn't trust her to make this right on her own. That's when I made the decision to call Mark. I'd never gone behind Lisa's back to talk to her husband before, but this situation was affecting his family too, and he deserved to know what had happened. I called him at work the next day and asked if we could meet for coffee. Mark was surprised to hear from me, but he agreed to meet. When I told him what I'd discovered about the $3,000 withdrawal and Tyler's party, his face went white. He told me that Lisa had assured him she had found a way to cover the party costs without impacting their family budget, but she'd been vague about the details. He'd assumed she'd maybe gotten a bonus at work or had some savings he didn't know about. Learning that the money had come from Emma's college fund was clearly devastating for Mark. He's a decent guy, and the idea that his son's party had been funded by stealing from a 16-year-old's education savings horrified him. He immediately apologized to me and promised to make it right. Mark was true to his word. Within 24 hours, he'd transferred $3,000 back into Emma's college account. He also sent me a text message confirming the transfer and apologizing again for what had happened. He said he'd had no idea about Lisa's plan and that he never would have agreed to the party if he'd known how it was being funded. I thought that would be the end of it. The money was back in Emma's account. Mark had made things right, and hopefully Lisa had learned a lesson about respecting boundaries and her daughter's future. But I was naive to think it would be that simple. A few days later, Emma came home from her weekend at Lisa's house visibly upset. She said Lisa and Mark had been fighting constantly, and the atmosphere in the house was terrible. Emma had overheard enough of their arguments to piece together that the fights were about the college fund and Tyler's party. She felt guilty, like somehow the situation was her fault, even though she'd done nothing wrong. I assured Emma that none of this was her fault and that the adults in the situation were responsible for fixing the problems they'd created. But I was angry that Lisa's poor decisions were now affecting Emma emotionally. Our daughter shouldn't have to feel guilty or stressed because her mother had made selfish choices. Over the next few weeks, things escalated quickly. Mark apparently gave Lisa an ultimatum. She needed to take full responsibility for what she'd done, apologize to both Emma and me, and commit to never accessing Emma's college fund without proper discussion again. According to what Emma overheard, Lisa's response was to double down on her. position that she'd done nothing wrong and that everyone was overreacting. The breaking point came when Mark discovered that the Tyler's birthday party wasn't the only financial boundary Lisa had crossed. While going through their finances more carefully, Mark found evidence that Lisa had been making other questionable spending decisions and hiding them from him. The college fund theft wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a pattern of financial dishonesty. Mark filed for divorce about 6 weeks after our coffee meeting. I found out through Emma, who was devastated by the news. Despite the problems between Lisa and Mark, Emma had grown attached to her stepfamily, and the idea of another divorce in her life was heartbreaking for her. Lisa's reaction to the divorce filing was to blame everyone except herself. She called me in a rage, screaming that I had destroyed her marriage by tattling to Mark about the college fund. She said I was vindictive and that I deliberately sabotaged her relationship because I was jealous of her happiness. She accused me of manipulating Mark against her and turning Emma against her too. I tried to explain to Lisa that I hadn't destroyed her marriage, her own actions had done that. I'd simply told Mark the truth about what had happened to Emma's college money. If she hadn't stolen from our daughter's future, there would have been nothing to tell. But Lisa was beyond reasoning with. In her mind, everyone else was the villain and she was the victim. The divorce process has been messy and bitter. Lisa has tried to paint herself as the wronged party, claiming that Mark was financially controlling and that I was interfering in their marriage. She's told anyone who will listen that the whole situation was blown out of proportion and that she's being punished for trying to do something nice for her stepson. What Lisa refuses to acknowledge is that Tyler's birthday party could have been paid for in dozens of legitimate ways. She could have saved up for it over several months. She could have had an honest conversation with Mark about adjusting their budget to accommodate the expense. She could have thrown a smaller, less expensive party that fit within their means. Instead, she chose to steal from her own daughter's college fund and lie to her husband about it. Emma has been caught in the middle of all this drama, and that's what makes me angriest about the whole situation. She's dealing with the stress of her mother's second divorce, the guilt of feeling like she somehow caused the problems, and the knowledge that her own mother stole money meant for her future. No 16-year-old should have to navigate that kind of emotional complexity. I've tried to shield Emma as much as possible from the worst of Lisa's behavior. When Lisa calls me to vent her anger and blame, I don't engage with the drama. I stick to the facts. She took money that wasn't hers to take. It was wrong, and the consequences are of her own making. I've also made sure Emma knows that none of this is her fault and that both Mark and I acted to protect her interests. Mark has been incredibly gracious throughout this whole ordeal. Even while dealing with his own divorce proceedings, he's made sure that Emma knows she's welcome in his home and that Tyler's friendship with her doesn't have to be affected by the adult problems. He's also continued to contribute to Emma's college fund. Even though he's no longer married to Lisa, his character in this situation has been exemplary. Tyler, Mark's son, has been another victim in all of this. He's a good kid who had no idea his Sweet 16 party was funded by stolen money. He's dealing with his father's divorce and probably feels guilty about the party, even though he bears no responsibility for how it was paid for. The adults in his life failed him by creating this situation. Lisa's attempts to make me the villain in this story have been exhausting but not surprising. She's always had a tendency to blame others when her poor decisions have consequences. During our marriage, it was always someone else's fault when things went wrong. I'd hoped that maturity and the responsibility of being a mother would have changed that pattern. But clearly it hasn't. What bothers me most is Lisa's complete lack of remorse toward Emma. She's so focused on being angry at Mark and me that she's never properly apologized to her daughter for stealing from her college fund. Emma has tried to bring up the subject a few times, hoping for acknowledgement and an apology. But Lisa either changes the subject or launches into explanations about how everyone overreacted. The financial aspect has been resolved. Emma's college fund is back to where it should be, thanks to Mark's integrity. But the emotional damage is harder to fix. Emma now has to live with the knowledge that her mother prioritized her stepbrother's birthday party over her daughter's future. That kind of betrayal leaves lasting wounds. I've encouraged Emma to consider counseling to help her process all of these feelings. She's hesitant because she doesn't want to seem like she's taking sides in the adult drama. But I've explained that therapy isn't about choosing sides, it's about learning healthy ways to cope with difficult situations and people. As for my relationship with Lisa going forward, it's going to be challenging. We still have to co-parent Emma for the next 2 years until she turns 18, but trust has been completely broken. I'll never again assume that Lisa will put Emma's interests first, and I'll be monitoring the college fund much more carefully. It's sad that it's come to this, but Lisa's actions have shown me that vigilance is necessary. Lisa continues to insist that I ruined her marriage by telling Mark the truth about the stolen money. She seems to believe that I should have just quietly let her theft slide to preserve her relationship. But I've never regretted my decision to tell Mark what happened. He deserved to know that his wife had lied to him and stolen from a teenager's college fund. Any marriage that can't survive that level of honesty about wrongdoing wasn't built on a solid foundation anyway. The irony is that if Lisa had just been honest from the beginning, if she'd talked to Mark about wanting to throw Tyler an expensive party and worked out a legitimate way to pay for it, none of this would have happened. Her marriage might have survived, Emma's college fund would have remained untouched, and Tyler could have had his party without it being tainted by theft and lies. Emma is slowly healing from all of this. She's focusing on her college applications and her part-time job, and she started talking about her future with excitement again. The college fund situation scared her because it made her realize how quickly her security could be threatened. But she's also learned that she has people in her life who will stand up for her when she's being wronged. I've learned some important lessons too. I've learned that I can never assume others will act with integrity, even when children's interests are at stake. I've learned that sometimes doing the right thing means having difficult conversations with people you'd rather not involve. And I've learned that protecting my daughter sometimes means being willing to be painted as the villain by someone who refuses to take responsibility for their actions. Mark's willingness to immediately fix the financial damage and then hold Lisa accountable for her actions restored some of my faith in people's basic decency. His integrity contrasted sharply with Lisa's selfishness and dishonesty. Emma has noticed this difference too, and I think it's taught her valuable lessons about the kind of character to look for in people. As for Lisa, I hope someday she realized that her actions had consequences not just for her marriage, but for her relationship with Emma. A mother who steals from her child's future to fund her stepchild's party has seriously damaged priorities. Until Lisa can acknowledge that and genuinely apologize to Emma, their relationship will continue to be strained. The whole experience has been emotionally exhausting, but I'm proud of how I handled it. I protected Emma's interests, told the truth when it mattered, and refused to be bullied into accepting unacceptable behavior. Lisa can blame me for ruining her marriage all she wants, but the truth is that she ruined it herself the moment she decided to steal from Emma's college fund. I just made sure the right people knew about it. Emma's future is secure. Mark proved himself to be a man of integrity, and Lisa learned that actions have consequences. I'd call that a successful outcome, even if it came at the cost of family drama and Lisa's second marriage. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's always worth it.